It wasn't the first time I heard someone call my wife beautiful, but this time, it hit differently. It wasn't the usual "she's so pretty" or "your wife is stunning." This time, it came from a man I had never seen before, someone new to the office, someone who seemed to stand a little taller, speak a little louder, and walk with a certain arrogance that made my chest tighten when I noticed him. His name was Blake. Blake had joined the company a few weeks ago, and he immediately found himself in a leadership position. I'm not one to judge, but something about him rubbed me the wrong way. He was one of those guys who always had a smug smile on his face, like he knew something you didn't. He had that confidence, the kind you couldn't fake, the kind that people either hated or envied. My wife, Lucy, was just the type to attract that kind of attention. She always carried herself with grace, and though I never doubted her loyalty, I started to notice things I hadn't before. It wasn't anything obvious at first. She was still coming home at the same time, still spending the evenings with me. But there was a change, a subtle shift. I couldn't place it. She'd smile a little more when she texted, laugh a little louder when she spoke about work. And I did what I always did. I kept my distance. I let her have her space, trusting that we were fine. Until one night, everything changed. It was a Friday evening, and we were out for dinner at a local restaurant we'd been to hundreds of times. We were sitting in the booth, chatting about our week, when I noticed him. Blake. He walked in, flanked by two of his coworkers. I didn't think much of it at first. But then, as he passed our table, I saw his eyes linger on Lucy. Not for a second, but for a moment longer than what would be considered polite. She didn't seem to notice, but I did. I felt it, deep in my gut. That tight, unsettling feeling you get when you know something's wrong, even if you can't quite place it. Lucy, ever the social butterfly, waved him over. She smiled brightly as he approached the table. I could feel my pulse quicken. I tried to push the unease away, but it was impossible. Blake slid into the booth next to her, and they exchanged some pleasantries. His smile was wide, too wide. He wasn't just being friendly. There was something more, something flirtatious in the way he spoke, the way he leaned a little too close when he talked to her. I tried to ignore it, but as the evening wore on, the feeling in my chest only grew stronger. I noticed how he would glance at Lucy, how he would laugh a little too easily at her jokes, how his hand brushed hers as they reached for the same menu. And when he stood up to leave, he did something I didn't expect. He placed his hand on her shoulder, a slow, deliberate gesture that made me freeze. He said something in her ear that made her laugh, and then he left. "Everything okay?" Lucy asked, noticing the change in my expression. "Yeah, just tired," I said, forcing a smile. But inside, I was anything but okay. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the evening in my mind. Why did he touch her like that? Why did he look at her like she was more than just another colleague? I couldn't shake the thought. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how far things had already gone. We were having breakfast when Lucy's phone buzzed. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and smiled. A simple "good morning" text from Blake. But there was something about it, something that made my stomach churn. She typed back, her fingers dancing quickly across the screen. "Morning, you're up early," she wrote. I didn't mean to, but my eyes lingered on her screen. She didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. That's when it hit me. Blake wasn't just a colleague. He was something more. He was the kind of guy who didn't just see my wife as beautiful. He saw her as someone to be conquered. I could feel it. The tension. The unspoken challenge. But I couldn't just accuse her. I couldn't just confront her without looking like a fool. And yet, I couldn't ignore the warning signs. The looks, the texts, the way she acted when she was around him. It was all too much to ignore. I had a choice to make. I could either let this slide and trust that everything would go back to normal, or I could find out what was really going on. And that's when I decided. I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch her slip away. I was going to find out the truth. The following days felt like a blur, a thick fog that clouded my thoughts and made my actions feel disconnected from reality. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. The way Blake looked at Lucy, the way they talked, the casual touches that shouldn't have been so casual. I tried to dismiss it all as my own insecurities, telling myself that I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Lucy seemed perfectly normal. She went about her day-to-day life with the same enthusiasm she always had. Her smiles were bright, her laughter genuine. But there was a coldness, a subtle distance, that I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't overt. She didn't act differently towards me, but there was a change in the way she spoke about work, a subtle shift in the way she mentioned Blake. The first time I asked her about him directly was over dinner one night. We were sitting at the table, just the two of us, and I had decided that I needed to know the truth. "How's work been?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She didn't seem to notice the underlying tension in my voice as she glanced up, a slight smile on her lips. "Oh, same old. Blake's been great. He's been really helpful with the new project," she said, her eyes twinkling. There it was again, the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about him. I didn't like it, but I kept my expression neutral, hoping my voice wouldn't betray the doubt growing inside me. "That's good," I replied, not really listening anymore. Instead, my mind was focused on that name, on the way she said it with such ease. Blake. I hated the sound of it, even though I had never met the guy. A few days later, my suspicions were only amplified. Lucy had asked me to help with a small project around the house, something she wanted to do for a while, but I hadn't gotten around to it. While I was working, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought, but today was different. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just my paranoia taking over, but I glanced at the screen. The message was from Blake. It was short, but there was an undertone to it that sent a chill down my spine. "Can't wait to see you tonight." That was it. My heart skipped a beat. She hadn't mentioned anything about seeing him, but then again, she didn't have to. She didn't owe me an explanation, not about something as harmless as a colleague sending a text, right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a friendly exchange. I could feel my blood pressure rising as I set the phone back down, pretending I hadn't seen anything. I told myself it was nothing, just a harmless message between coworkers. But then why did it feel so wrong? Why did my gut twist into knots? And why was I so sure this wasn't the first time something like this had happened? That night, Lucy got ready for bed earlier than usual. She was tired, she said, but something felt off. She wasn't acting the way she usually did. Normally, we would chat about our day, talk about anything and everything, but tonight she seemed distant. Her responses were short, her smile absent. I didn't know what was happening, but I felt like I was losing her. The distance between us wasn't physical, but emotional, and it was growing wider with each passing day. As I lay in bed, my mind raced with 1,000 questions. Was I just being paranoid? Was I reading too much into it? Or was something truly happening between them? I couldn't stop myself from wondering how far this would go if I didn't do something. If I didn't take control, what would I be left with? Would I wake up one morning to find her gone, with no explanation, just like those people you hear about on the news? The ones who disappear, leaving a trail of confusion and heartbreak in their wake? The thought terrified me. I loved Lucy. I had built a life with her, and I wasn't about to let it slip away without a fight. But what could I do? How could I confront her without looking crazy, without accusing her of something I wasn't sure about? I couldn't just come out and say, "Are you having an affair with Blake?" But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the signs. I needed proof. I needed something that would give me clarity, something that would either confirm my worst fears or set me at ease. That's when I made a decision. I was going to follow her. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to know. I needed to see for myself if there was something more between them. And if there was, I'd confront her. If there wasn't, then I could finally put my mind at ease. I didn't know how it would all play out, but I had no other choice. I had to know the truth. The next few days felt like a foggy dream, one where every step I took seemed like a carefully measured move on a path I didn't want to walk, but couldn't avoid. I had already made up my mind. I would follow Lucy. I didn't want to. It went against every ounce of trust one had once placed in her, but what else could I do? The signs were right there, flashing before me. It wasn't just the texts or the messages. It wasn't even the way she spoke about Blake. It was the way her behavior had shifted. It was subtle, but undeniable. I wasn't imagining this. There was something going on, something between them, and I had to find out what. That Friday, I watched her get dressed for work. It was the same routine we'd always followed. She'd get up first, shower, and then pick out something to wear. I'd make coffee, and we'd sit together while she had breakfast. But that day, I couldn't focus on anything except her. I was watching her every move, scrutinizing the way she slipped into her blouse, the way she adjusted the sleeves, the way she fixed her hair before stepping out the door. "Everything okay?" she asked as she caught me staring at her, my eyes almost burning through her. "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing a smile. just tired. She didn't seem to notice anything strange about my behavior. In fact, she seemed oblivious, as if nothing had changed at all. I kissed her goodbye, told her to have a good day, and watched her drive off. As soon as the door shut behind me, I grabbed my phone and began making my plan. I knew I couldn't follow her in a way that seemed obvious. I had to be discreet. I couldn't afford to get caught, not yet. So, I waited until she'd been at work for a while, and then I drove to the area around her office. I parked a few blocks away and just waited. Time seemed to drag on endlessly as I sat there, my hands gripped tightly on the wheel. Every time a car passed, I wondered if it was hers, if I was missing her by mere minutes. After what felt like hours, I finally saw her car pull into the parking garage of the building where she worked. I could feel the weight in my chest getting heavier as I started the car and followed her in. I parked a few spots away from hers, ensuring I wouldn't be too obvious. My heart was pounding in my ears as I watched her walk into the building, her steps confident, almost carefree. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten as I sat there, debating whether or not I should follow her inside. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to be sure, and I wasn't going to rush it. I spent the next few hours waiting, watching. It was torture. I couldn't stop thinking about what I might find, what I might learn. Would I catch her in a moment of weakness? Would she do something, anything, to give it away? But the hours passed in silence, and nothing happened. No sudden changes, no unusual behavior. Everything seemed normal. It wasn't until the late afternoon that I saw something that made my heart freeze in my chest. I watched as Blake's car pulled into the same garage, right next to Lucy's. He got out, a little too quick, a little too eager. He walked towards the building, his strides long, purposeful. And then, about 10 minutes later, I saw Lucy. She came out of the building, looking around briefly, before heading straight for Blake. At first, I thought I was seeing things. But no. She walked right up to him, and as they exchanged a few words, I saw it. He reached out and touched her arm, gently, in a way that felt too familiar, too intimate. They exchanged a smile that I knew all too well. It was the kind of smile that said everything without saying a word. They were more than just co-workers. I watched them talk for a while. Blake was leaning in, too close, his hand still resting lightly on her arm. Then, almost as if they had planned it, they both turned and walked toward a nearby cafe. That's when I made my move. I followed them from a distance, my heart pounding in my throat. I couldn't let them see me, not yet. But I had to know. I had to see what they were doing. I watched as they entered the cafe, their heads tilted towards each other, laughing about something. Lucy's laugh, the one that used to make me smile, sounded different today. It wasn't the carefree laugh I remembered. There was something else in it, something secretive, something that didn't belong to me. They sat at a small table by the window. I watched from across the street, feeling like I was in a fog. What was I supposed to do now? What was I even hoping to find? The answer was clear, but I didn't want to face it. Not yet. Minutes later, Blake leaned in closer, his hand grazing the edge of Lucy's, and my stomach lurched. She didn't pull away. She didn't seem uncomfortable. In fact, she seemed at ease. The sight was too much. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned away and walked back to my car, my legs feeling weak beneath me. When I got back to the apartment, I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there. But what would I say? What if I was wrong? What if this was just a misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a random encounter. This was something far deeper. And now, I was left to figure out what came next. Lucy was going to have to explain herself, one way or another. The following days felt like a slow-motion train wreck that I couldn't look away from, but I couldn't quite step off either. I was spiraling, drowning in thoughts and doubts. My mind replayed the scene at the cafe over and over, each detail clear and sharp, and yet, my body refused to react. It was as though I had seen the truth, but wasn't ready to admit it to myself. Was I really watching my wife slowly slip away into the arms of another man? I had spent years building this life with Lucy. She had been my rock, the person who balanced out my more introverted nature, who made me feel safe in a world that often seemed cold and uncertain. But now, I was starting to wonder if she had ever really seen me, if she had ever truly appreciated the quiet, steady love I gave her. Could it be that she had been waiting for someone like Blake to come along? Someone with the confidence and the charm that I lacked? I wasn't sure, but the pieces were falling into place whether I liked it or not. I decided to confront her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it immediately. Instead, I bided my time. The following week was a blur of work and anxious anticipation. Each time I saw her, I looked for signs. A lingering glance, a text left carelessly on the table, a smile that seemed a little too practiced. But none of those things came. Lucy was her usual self, charming, warm, and completely unaware of what was brewing inside me. She went about her day-to-day life, and I went about mine. Except there was one thought that consumed me. What was she doing when I wasn't around? And then one evening, the question finally came to a head. Lucy came home from work a little earlier than usual, her car pulling into the driveway with its usual hum. I had been waiting in the living room, pretending to read a book, but my eyes kept flicking to the clock. It was strange. Normally, she would come in, give me a kiss, and we'd talk about our day. But tonight, there was something different in the air. There was an unspoken tension. She walked in, smiling, as though everything were perfectly normal. But I could tell by the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes that something was off. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the unease I was feeling. "It was good," she said, her voice light. "Busy, you know how it is." She kicked off her shoes and headed towards the kitchen, a slight rush in her movements. I watched her carefully, noting how she moved with purpose, almost as though she was avoiding me. The question that had been gnawing at me for days hung heavily in the air. Did she feel guilty? "You seem distracted," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She paused for a moment, turning to face me. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, and the look in her eyes was almost defensive. "Just tired. You know how it is." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than just fatigue. I stood up, my mind racing. "Lucy, I need to talk to you about something." Her expression shifted, a flash of something unreadable crossing her face. It was so brief, so subtle, but I saw it. She knew what I was about to say. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice suddenly softer. I could see her trying to act calm, but I could feel the tension radiating off her. I took a deep breath. "Is there something going on with Blake?" The words came out more gently than I'd intended, but they were out there now, hanging between us like an anchor. Her face went pale for a split second, and it didn't go unnoticed by me. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. She was playing the innocent card, but the crack in her demeanor told me she knew exactly what I meant. "I saw you two together. At the cafe." My voice barely above a whisper, I added. "You didn't even try to hide it." Lucy's eyes widened, a flash of panic in them before she quickly masked it with a tight smile. "Greg, you're overreacting," she said, trying to brush it off. "We're just friends. That's all. Blake is a colleague, nothing more." I could see the lies forming, like a thin veneer that I could easily peel back. "Really? Then why did he touch your arm like that? Why did you both look like you were sharing something more?" My voice was a little harsher now, the frustration creeping into my words. Her face flushed, but she didn't say anything at first. I could see her struggling, weighing whether to keep up the facade or admit what was already clear to me. Finally, she sighed, looking away. "It's not what you think," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I felt my heart stop for a moment. "So it's true?" I asked quietly, not wanting to hear the answer, but needing to. Lucy looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Greg, I never wanted to hurt you. But yes, there's something between me and Blake. I didn't plan it. It just happened." The words hung in the air like poison, the sharp sting of betrayal cutting through me like a knife. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I didn't know what to say. I was too stunned, too lost in the pain of the moment to find words that could make sense of it. "I never meant for it to go this far," Lucy said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I feel something for him, something I haven't felt in a long time. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you, Greg. I don't know what to do." I couldn't process everything she was saying. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave her and never look back. But another part of me, the part that had always been there for her, wanted to understand. I needed to understand how we got here, how everything had fallen apart without me even realizing it. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without a fight. Not now. Not when I had already seen the truth. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel the weight of her confession press down on me like a physical force, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to demand answers, but I just stood there, frozen. I couldn't make sense of what she had just said. The woman I had spent years with, the woman who had always been my anchor, had betrayed me in the most painful way. And now, she was standing there, looking at me with tears in her eyes, as if asking for forgiveness. But I wasn't sure if I could give her that. Not yet. I never wanted to hurt you, Greg. Lucy repeated, her voice trembling. It's complicated. I've been feeling this way for a while, and when Blake came into the picture, it just felt different. I didn't plan for any of this. I wanted to say something, to ask her how long it had been going on, if this was just some fleeting attraction or something deeper. But the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to ask her, because I was terrified of what she might say next. Was this just a phase for her? Or had she already made up her mind? What about us, Lucy? I finally managed to ask. My voice was shaky, but I had to know. What about everything we've built together? Was it all just a lie? She took a step towards me, her eyes full of guilt. No, Greg. It wasn't a lie. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I still care about you. I do. But I can't ignore how I feel about him. Her words hit me like a slap. They were so simple, yet they carried a weight that crushed me. I can't ignore how I feel about him. The honesty in her voice made me want to collapse. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had for someone else? I turned away from her, unable to look at her face any longer. The pain was too much. I needed space. I needed to think. I don't know what to say, Lucy, I whispered. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I want to try. She was quiet for a moment, and then I heard her take a deep breath. I understand if you're angry. I deserve it. But I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I needed to be honest with you. I couldn't keep hiding this. I felt a surge of anger rise in me, but I swallowed it down. What good would it do to lash out? It wouldn't change anything. You should have told me sooner. I muttered, more to myself than to her. This whole thing is a mess. And now I don't even know who you are anymore. Lucy flinched, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I felt so small, so betrayed. She had been the center of my world, and now, it felt like everything was crumbling apart. I know, she whispered, her voice small and broken. I'm sorry, Greg. I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't lie to myself, and I can't lie to you. I stood there, motionless, as her words hung in the air. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I wanted to fight for her, to salvage whatever we had left, or if I just wanted to walk away and never look back. The thought of losing her, of losing everything we had built together, tore me apart, but the thought of staying, of accepting this betrayal, was even worse. Lucy didn't move. She just stood there, her eyes pleading for something I wasn't sure I could give. Please, she said softly. I need time. I need space to figure this out. But I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. I just want you to know the truth. I wanted to say something back, to tell her that I needed time too, but I couldn't find the words. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I think I need to go for a walk, I finally said, my voice barely audible. I need to clear my head. Lucy nodded, stepping back slowly. I understand, she said quietly. Take all the time you need. I walked out of the apartment without another word, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do. I just knew I needed to get out of there. The world felt too small, too confined, and I needed space to breathe. As I walked through the streets, my mind kept coming back to one thing, Blake. I couldn't stop thinking about him. The man who had stolen my wife's attention. The man who had made her feel something I hadn't been able to. How had it happened? How had he wormed his way into her heart, into her life, without me even noticing? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by staying in the dark. It was time to confront him. I had to see for myself what he was all about. If he was the man who had taken my wife from me, then he needed to face me. I made up my mind. The next step was clear. I was going to find Blake, and I was going to get the answers I needed, whatever the cost. The walk didn't bring the clarity I thought it would. In fact, the longer I walked, the more confused and angry I became. The streets seemed to stretch endlessly in front of me, and yet every step I took felt like I was running away from something I couldn't outrun. It wasn't just Lucy and Blake that I was running from anymore. It was everything. The trust one had built, the life I had come to depend on, all of it was slipping through my fingers. My head was spinning with questions, and every time I tried to stop and think, more doubts filled the empty spaces. I had been through a lot in my life, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever prepared me for this. I had always been the kind of person who avoided conflict, who kept things calm, who believed that everything could be solved with time and understanding. But how do you fix a broken trust? How do you repair a relationship when you're no longer sure if the person you're with has even been honest with you? I ended up at a bar, without thinking. I didn't want to go home, not yet. Not until I had some kind of answer. I needed to figure out what I was going to do, and I couldn't do it with the weight of Lucy's gaze on me, constantly watching, waiting for me to say something. My mind kept coming back to Blake, and I knew I couldn't stay in the dark forever. The bar was dark, the kind of place that smelled like old wood and stale beer. The clink of glasses and the low hum of conversation seemed so distant, as if I was living in a world separate from everyone else. I sat at the counter, nursing a drink, trying to clear my mind. But it wasn't working. The more I thought about Blake, the more my anger grew. He was out there, probably laughing at me right now, enjoying the fact that he had somehow weaseled his way into my life, into my wife's heart. I wasn't going to let that happen. After a few too many drinks, I made a decision. I was going to confront him. No more sitting back. No more waiting for answers. I was done being the guy who waits, who stays quiet, who hopes things will get better on their own. I was going to find Blake, and I was going to get the truth from him. I left the bar, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. It was as if I had finally woken up from a nightmare, but it was too late to go back to sleep. I dialed Blake's number, my hands shaking as I held the phone to my ear. He picked up on the first ring, his voice full of that same self-assured arrogance that had been bugging me from the moment I first saw him. "Blake," I said, my voice low and tight. "We need to talk." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him shift, probably surprised to hear from me, but then he responded. "Greg, what's going on?" "We're going to meet," I said, my words sharper than I intended. "Now?" Another pause, but this time it was followed by a chuckle. "All right, man. Calm down. Where do you want to meet?" I didn't care about the location. I didn't care about anything except making sure he understood the gravity of what was happening. "I'm at the corner of 5th and Main. I'll be waiting." I hung up the phone before he could respond. I didn't need his approval or his agreement. This wasn't about that anymore. This was about something much bigger. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I got them. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the cold wind cutting through my jacket as I waited. I could hear the occasional car pass by, the distant sound of people laughing from a nearby restaurant, but nothing seemed to matter. All I could focus on was the confrontation that was about to happen. Blake arrived a few minutes later, his tall figure easily spotted against the dim light of the street. He walked towards me with that same confident swagger that had always irritated me. He had his hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the area as if he was just out for a casual stroll. He didn't know that this was no casual encounter. This was the moment that everything changed. "What's this about, Greg?" Blake asked, stopping a few feet away from me, his arms crossed. He looked amused, like he couldn't quite figure out why I had dragged him out here. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "What's going on between you and my wife?" Blake's smile faltered, just for a second. He glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the directness of my question, but then his confident mask returned. "Your wife?" He let out a short laugh. "Man, I didn't think you'd be the type to be so possessive." I could feel the anger building inside me, but I didn't let it show. "Cut the crap, Blake," I snapped. "I know what's been going on. I know about you too, and I want to know why. Why her? What the hell do you think you're doing?" For the first time, I saw Blake's facade crack. He shifted his weight, the cocky grin fading from his face. "You think you know everything, huh?" he said, his voice growing colder. "You think I'm some kind of villain? You're just mad because your wife chose me. But that's on her, not me." The words hit me harder than I expected. She chose me. He had no idea how much those words would sting, but I couldn't let him see it. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "Why her?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "What do you want with her?" Blake paused, then gave a half shrug. "I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened. She's amazing, man. She makes everything feel alive." He looked away for a moment, and when he turned back to me, there was a flicker of something more sincere in his eyes. I didn't want to hurt you, but she wanted me to. And that's the truth. The air between us seemed to crackle with tension. I wanted to throw a punch, to yell, to do anything to release the storm of emotions that had been building inside me. But instead, I just stood there, staring at him. I had my answer, even if it wasn't what I wanted. Lucy had made her choice. And now, I was left to figure out what to do with the shattered pieces of my life. The words Blake spoke hung in the air like a bitter fog, each syllable slicing deeper into my chest. She wanted me to. The brutal honesty of it left me stunned, motionless. It wasn't just his casual dismissal of the pain he had caused me. It was the cold reality that my wife had made a choice. She didn't just fall into something. She actively chose Blake. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the idea of who I thought she was. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I swallowed it down. What would I accomplish by yelling? Blake had already made his stance clear. He didn't care. Not really. To him, I was just a background character in the story of his conquest. I wasn't even worth feeling guilty for. Do you feel good about this? I finally asked, my voice a low growl. About what you've done. Do you think you're a hero in some twisted way? Blake didn't flinch. He just looked at me with that infuriating, self-satisfied smirk. I'm not your enemy, Greg. I didn't come here to destroy your life. But it's not my fault your wife and I connected. It's her choice, not mine. The calmness of his words made my skin crawl. He wasn't even trying to justify himself anymore. He was treating it like an inevitable conclusion, like it was natural for her to fall for him, and natural for me to just accept it. I felt a sharp knot form in my stomach, a mixture of fury and disbelief. How had I missed this? How had she let this go on, knowing the devastation it would cause? You know what the worst part is? I asked, shaking my head, more to myself than to him. It's not just that you slept with her. It's the way you think you're entitled to her. You think you've won something, but all you've done is destroy something that didn't belong to you. Blake's smile faltered for a split second, and that small crack was enough to make my heart race. He was starting to feel the weight of what he had done, but it was too late now. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about Lucy and me. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, was the one who had let all this happen. I'm done with this conversation, Blake said, his tone suddenly sharp, as if he realized he had given me too much already. You've got your answers, Greg. I'm not here to fight you. But his words didn't land on me the way he wanted. They bounced off, as though they were just empty noise in a world that had already shifted beneath my feet. I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let him walk away with that smug look on his face, like he had somehow come out on top. You think it's that easy? You think you've won and can just walk away? You think I'm going to let you just slip away into my life like you belong here? Blake's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in him, but he quickly masked it with that signature arrogance. What do you want from me, Greg? What's your plan here? My hands balled into fists, my nails digging into my palms, but I kept my composure. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I don't know yet, I said through gritted teeth. But I'm not going to stand by and watch my entire world fall apart because of you. He took a slow breath, clearly tired of the back and forth. You think you're the first guy who's been in this situation? You think you're the first to get hurt like this? His words were venomous, designed to provoke, but they only made me more resolute. He was right about one thing. I wasn't the first. I wasn't the first to feel this kind of betrayal, but I was going to be the one to change it. I wasn't going to let Lucy get away with this, no matter how hard it hurt. Blake turned to walk away, but something inside me snapped. Don't think for a second that this is over, Blake. I called after him. My voice was calm, controlled, but there was something in it that stopped him dead in his tracks. He turned back slowly, his eyes locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his gaze. This is far from over, I repeated, my voice low but full of warning. I'll make sure of it. Blake didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just turned and walked away, his figure slowly disappearing into the shadows. But as I stood there, watching him go, I realized that the real battle was just beginning. I still didn't know what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let my marriage die without a fight. Blake might have thought he won, but he hadn't seen the fight that was coming. He hadn't seen what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. I didn't know if I could save my marriage, but I was sure as hell going to try. And whatever it took, I was going to make sure Lucy knew exactly what she had risked. It wasn't just me she had betrayed. It was everything we had built together. And I wasn't going to let that go without a fight. It was time to get the truth from Lucy. I wasn't going to wait any longer. No more games. No more lies. The clock was ticking, and I was done being passive. If she wanted to rebuild what we had, it would be on my terms. No more hiding. No more pretending. It was time to face the consequences. And this time, I wouldn't back down. The days following my confrontation with Blake were some of the hardest I had ever endured. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the confusion, the anger, seemed to hang in the air like a thick cloud, and I wasn't sure how to break through it. I couldn't go on pretending everything was fine, but I also realized that I didn't want to keep living in this bitter, suffocating place. I wanted something real again. I wanted to fight for what was worth fighting for, and that was Lucy. I spent a lot of time reflecting in the silence that followed, thinking about what had led us here. I wasn't innocent in all of this. I had become complacent. I had stopped paying attention. I had stopped putting in the effort. Relationships take work, real work, and I had let that slip through my fingers. I was just as responsible for what had happened as she was. But the difference between us was that I was ready to admit it. I wasn't ready to give up on everything just because things had gotten hard. And Lucy? She was my partner. I couldn't just turn my back on the woman I had loved for so long. She had made a mistake, yes. But she wasn't a villain in this story. She was human. She had been lost in something, and I realized that I needed to help her find her way back. But I couldn't do that if I was too caught up in my own pride, too focused on the betrayal. If we were going to fix this, it had to be together. So, I did what I should have done from the start. I called her. "Lucy, we need to talk," I said when she picked up. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but she didn't argue. "Okay, where?" I didn't want to do this at home. Too many memories. Too much anger. So, I asked her to meet me at the park we used to go to when we first started dating. It was a place that had always been special to us, a place where we could talk, laugh, and forget about the world. I wanted that space back, even if only for an hour. When I saw her standing near the old oak tree, her face pale, her eyes red from crying, my heart broke all over again. But I couldn't walk away. I took a deep breath and walked over to her. We didn't say anything at first. We just stood there, facing each other. She was waiting for me to speak, and I was waiting for the right moment. Finally, I broke the silence. "I've been angry," I said quietly. "Angry at you, at Blake, at myself. But I realized that being angry won't fix anything. I still care about you, Lucy. I want to fight for us. But it's going to take both of us. I can't do this alone." Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for my hand. "Greg, I'm so sorry. I made a huge mistake. I was confused, and I didn't know what to do. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I never stopped loving you." Her words hit me like a wave, washing away the bitterness I had been holding onto for so long. I squeezed her hand, holding onto the hope that maybe we could find our way back to each other. "I don't know if I can forget what happened," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to fight for us. If you are." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will. I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, Greg. I want to rebuild this. I want us to be happy again." And in that moment, I knew that we had a chance. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but we could rebuild. Trust takes time, but we could earn it back, piece by piece. We both had to put in the work, and we both had to be vulnerable. But as long as we were both willing to try, there was hope. We stood there for a while, holding hands, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it was a start, a beginning, and that's all we needed. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the park, we walked away together, side by side. The future was uncertain, and there was still so much to work through. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were headed in the right direction. We weren't perfect, and our journey wasn't going to be flawless. But we were taking it one step at a time, and that was enough. Because sometimes, the hardest things to fix are the ones worth saving. And as long as we kept moving forward together, there was no obstacle too big for us to overcome. This wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. And for the first time in a long while, I believed that things would get better, that we could be happy again, together.